Life in Tudor England was a time of great change, a period where the power of kings and queens shaped the lives of ordinary people, and where the nation itself transformed from a medieval kingdom into a true Renaissance power. From the grandeur of Henry VIII's court to the struggles of the common folk, the Tudor era was one of ambition, discovery, and conflict. The Tudor dynasty began in 1485 when Henry VII, a distant Lancastrian claimant to the throne, defeated Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth. With his reign came the end of the Wars of the Roses, a conflict that had torn England apart for decades. Henry VII was cautious and wise, bringing financial stability to the kingdom. Henry VII left his son, Henry VIII, a kingdom in a position of financial strength, carefully built through years of frugal governance, diplomatic maneuvering, and strict taxation policies. By the time of his death in 1509, he had amassed an enormous fortune, estimated at around £1.5 to £2 million, potentially worth close to $1 billion today, ensuring that his successor inherited a treasury overflowing with wealth. This financial stability, combined with a peaceful realm and a strong administration, set Henry VIII up for success, giving him the means to embark on ambitious projects. However, Henry VIII's reign was marked by extravagance and reckless spending. He lavished money on grand palaces, opulent feasts, and a glittering court, while also funding costly wars with France and Scotland. His military campaigns, combined with his break from the Catholic Church and the dissolution of the monasteries, ultimately drained the royal treasury, leaving England in a far more precarious financial position than when he had inherited it. Henry VIII is perhaps the most famous of all the Tudor monarchs. A larger-than-life figure, he was known for his 6 wives, his break from the Catholic Church, and his relentless pursuit of a male heir. His reign was both glorious and terrifying. He transformed England into a Protestant nation, dissolving the monasteries and redistributing their wealth. This made him powerful, but it also created unrest, as many still clung to their Catholic beliefs. Under his rule, England saw great naval expansion, strengthening the kingdom's military power. His children would inherit the throne in succession. First came Edward VI, the sickly boy king, who ruled for a mere 6 years and pushed England further into Protestantism. Then came the dramatic and tragic reign of Mary I, known as Bloody Mary, for her persecution of Protestants as she sought to restore Catholicism. Her reign was brief, and upon her death in 1558, her younger half-sister, Elizabeth I, took the throne. Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, ushered in what is known as the Golden Age of England. Her reign was marked by the defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588, the flourishing of English drama under William Shakespeare, and the expansion of exploration under figures like Sir Francis Drake. She was a shrewd ruler, balancing the demands of religious factions and keeping foreign enemies at bay. Under her rule, England became a force to be reckoned with on the world stage. While the Tudors sat on golden thrones and wore elaborate gowns, life for ordinary people was far different. England remained a deeply hierarchical society. At the top were the nobility and the gentry, landowners who wielded immense power. Below them were the merchants and craftsmen, whose fortunes rose with England's growing economy. At the very bottom were the peasants, who toiled in the fields and lived in simple homes made of wattle and daub. For most, daily life revolved around farming. England was still an agricultural nation, and the majority of its people worked the land, growing crops like wheat, barley, and rye. Life was hard, especially in times of bad harvests, which often led to famine. The wealthy enjoyed meat, fine bread, and imported luxuries, while the poor survived on pottage, a thick soup made of grains and vegetables. Education was limited to the privileged few. Boys from wealthy families were taught Latin, mathematics, and rhetoric, while girls were often trained in household management. However, the rise of printing meant that literacy was increasing, particularly in towns where trade was booming. The Protestant Reformation encouraged people to read the Bible for themselves, further fueling a desire for education. It was also an era of harsh punishments and superstition. The Tudors ruled with an iron fist, and justice was swift and brutal. Public executions were common, with beheadings reserved for the nobility and hangings for common criminals. Heretics were burned at the stake, and traitors were subjected to the horrific fate of being hanged, drawn, and quartered. Disease was rampant. The plague swept through England multiple times during the Tudor period, killing thousands. Poor sanitation and a lack of medical knowledge meant that even a simple infection could be deadly. Superstition often guided medicine, with people relying on charms, herbal remedies, and bloodletting to cure ailments. During the Tudor period, sugar was considered a rare and exotic luxury, often referred to as white gold due to its high cost and status as a symbol of wealth. However, what the Tudors did not realize was that this sweet indulgence was a silent killer. Consumed in excess by the nobility, sugar contributed to severe dental decay, with blackened and rotting teeth becoming a common affliction among the elite, ironically seen as a sign of affluence rather than disease. Queen Elizabeth I herself was said to suffer from toothaches and abscesses, likely a result of her love for sugared treats. But the dangers of sugar went far beyond ruined smiles. In an age before modern medicine, the long-term effects of excessive sugar consumption, such as diabetes and chronic infections, were poorly understood, leading to slow, painful deaths. The high levels of sugar in the Tudor diet, particularly among the wealthy, would have worsened underlying health conditions, causing premature death from conditions we now recognize as metabolic disorders. What was once treasured as a rare delight ultimately sowed the seeds for centuries of health crises, proving that not all treasures are as sweet as they seem. Women's lives were strictly controlled. They were expected to marry young, bear children, and obey their husbands. A woman's status depended entirely on her husband's wealth and reputation. However, some, like Elizabeth I, defied these expectations, proving that women could wield power just as effectively as men. Despite the hardships, the Tudor era saw some of the greatest achievements in English history. The period gave birth to some of the world's most renowned figures. William Shakespeare revolutionized English literature, while explorers like Sir Walter Raleigh and John Cabot expanded England's influence overseas. The Navy, built up under Henry VIII and later Elizabeth I, laid the foundations for England's future as a global empire. The religious shifts of the Tudors shaped England's future. The break with Rome set the country on a Protestant path, which would define its national identity for centuries. The dissolution of the monasteries redistributed wealth and created a new class of landowners, changing the social fabric of England forever. By the time Elizabeth I died in 1603, the Tudor era came to an end. The throne passed to the Stuarts, uniting England and Scotland under James I. But the legacy of the Tudors endured. Their impact on religion, governance, exploration, and culture would influence England for generations. The Tudor period was a time of grandeur and hardship, of immense change and lasting achievements. It was an age where kings and queens shaped the destiny of the nation, where literature and exploration flourished, and where the lives of the people, from the highest noble to the humblest peasant, were forever transformed. Their story remains one of the most fascinating chapters in English history.